All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padojika Charja Astoto to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padojika Charja Astoto to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So we must be on text 11, is that correct? Yes.
Yes, Prabhu.
11 to 12, okay. Page 266. Yeah, you have a different page number. It's text 11, 611. She has a different book. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 31st day of August 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're reading from chapter 6, Dhyana-yoga, yoga of meditation. Text 11 to 12 at the bottom of 266. Okay. Shuchau Deshe Pratishtapya Stiram Asanam Atmanaha Nati Utritam Nati Nicham Chailajina Kushotaram Tatraikagram Manakritpa Yatachitendriya Kriyaha Upavishyasane Yunjyad Yogam Atma Vishuddhaye. Can you help him get the book? Okay. Page 266. Can you sit down there? Okay, okay. Just, yeah, leave it on there. All right. Thank you, Prabhu. He's had a stroke long ago, and he's, yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll start. Hold on. Do you have the right page? Okay, you're okay. Very good. Shucha deshe pratishtapya stiramasanamatmanaha natyuchitam nati nicham chailajina kushotaram tatraikagram manakritva yatachittendriya kriyaha upavishyasane yunjyad yogam atma vishuddhaye shuchadeshe pratishtapya stiramasanamatmanaha natyuchitam nati nicham chailajina kushotaram tatraikagram manakritva yatachittendriya kriyaha upavishyasane yunjyad yogam atma vishuddhaye. You got the page 266? 266, bottom of pages. Okay, you sound like you can chant. Go ahead. Shruta-deshe pratishtapya stiramasanamatmanaha natyuchitam nati nicham chailajina kushotaram tatraikagram manakritva yatachittendriya kriyaha upavishyasane yunjad yogam atma vishuddhaye. Anyone else want to try here? Okay, no one's jumping in. Anyone online?
Sukhaudesha pratishtapya
Shrutadeshe pratishtapya
Shritam asanam atmatmanaha
stiramasanamatmanaha
Natye utritam nati nichayam
natyuchitam nati nicham
Chailajina kudostaram
chailajina kushotaram
Tatrikagram manakritva
tatraikagram manakritva
Yata tritendriya kriyaha
yatachittendriya kriyaha
Upavyasana yuchidyad
upavishyasane yunjyad
Yogamatva vishuddhaye.
yogamatma vishuddhaye. Want to try? That's it, you don't have to. Oh, maybe this. Is there anyone else online? Come on, Tapas, you're there.
Desha pratishtapya
Deshe pratishtapya
stiram asaram atmana
stiramatmanamatmanaha
nati uchritam nati nicham
natyuchitam nati nicham
chailajina kushotaram
chailajina kushotaram
tatrikagram manokritva
tatraikagram manakritva
yatachittendriya kriya
yatachittendriya kriyaha
upavishyasena yunjyad
upavishyasane yunjad
yogam atma vishuddhaya.
yogam atma vishuddhaye. All right, I'll read the synonyms. You just read along. Shuchau in a sanctified deshe land, pratishtapya placing, stiram firm, asanam seat, atmanaha his own, not ati tu uchitam high, not ati tu nicham low, chaila ajina of soft cloth and deerskin, kusha and kusha grass, uttaram covering, tatra thereupon, eka agram with one attention, manaha mind, kritva making, yata chitta controlling the mind, indriya senses, kriyaha and activities, upavishya sitting, asane on the seat, yunjat should execute yogam, yoga practice, atma, the heart, vishuddhaye, for clarifying. Translation. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. Purport. Sacred place refers to places of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis, the transcendentalists or the devotees, all leave home and reside in sacred places such as Prayag, Mathura, Vrindavan, Rishikesh, and Hardwar, and in solitude practice yoga where the sacred rivers like the Yamuna and the Ganges flow. But often this is not possible, especially for Westerners. The so-called yoga societies in big cities may be successful in earning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for the actual practice of yoga. One who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. Therefore, in the Bṛhan-nāradīya Purāṇa, it is said that in Kali-yuga, the present yuga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual realization, and always disturbed by various anxieties, the best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. If anyone knows this verse, they can chant along. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalau nascheva, nascheva, nascheva gataranyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. Om jnana timirandasya, jnanandana shalakaya, chakshu unmidatam mena, tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I have to ask you, if it gets too cold in here, let me know and I'll adjust it. It's set for 74 degrees, but it seems like 71 right now. I mean, anyway, so we'll go on. Maybe we'll transcend bodily concept of mind. So now Krishna's giving very explicit instructions on how to practice this Ashtanga Yoga, eightfold system of yoga, consisting first of asana. So he's telling us about asana, how to sit, where to sit, and what the situations are. You may wonder, as I did, about the deer skin. Prabhupada explains that, first of all, this is from a deer who's died naturally. They don't kill deers. And there's these wonderful sets. I would recommend you. Now, nobody listens to cassette tapes anymore. But you just write to me, and I'll send you the yoga system tapes, yoga system recordings. Prabhupada gave a lecture on this whole chapter in various places, beginning in L.A., I think in 1970 or something. Wonderful, wonderful lectures. And he explains there about the deer skin. He says that, just think about it, you're supposed to go alone, right? I think it's mentioned that in this verse or the next verse. So you're alone, and you're in a secluded place in the forest, right? And you're meditating. Well, there's all kinds of animals there. There's lions, there's tigers, there are snakes, So probably you don't see them, but you can imagine. You're sitting there, oh, what is that? What is that? So how are you going to concentrate, right? So the deer skin, apparently, has some chemical in it that the snakes won't come there. So at least you don't have to worry about snakes. And so that's used for the yogis. And sometimes they wear the deer skin, like that. So that's mentioned here. But the point here, as we'll probably reiterate in different purports, is that this process is very exclusive. How are you going to find such a place in the middle of the big city? You can't. You have to leave, and you probably have a job. You have children. You have to pay the rent. It's impossible. And still, they have yoga studios where a little facsimile of this is practiced. I was practicing yoga. I didn't know anything about Hare Krishna. I wanted to improve my health. I had a serious case of hepatitis when I was about 20 years old. This was in New York. And so I searched. We had these things, by the way, I don't know who's old enough to remember, yellow pages. You remember Yellow Pages? So that's what, now you look online. So this is, I looked in the Yellow Pages and I found a studio. I was in Long Island, so I had to drive into New York, into the Manhattan. And I started driving in there and attending these classes, and I would come home and practice, you know. And of course, you don't really learn much about meditation. It's asanas. It's what they call asanas, the different exercises, stretching and bending, which are very good for you. And I had a good result with that. And gradually, from that connection, I then went to another yoga studio, and from them, I got the chanting of the Hare Krishna, and then from them, I went to the temple, and that was the end of my search. So, as we'll read here, there are more instructions, very practical instructions. But as Prabhupada points out right here in the first purport, it's not really very practical for people in this age. People are short-lived, slow in spiritual. He's quoting a verse from the Bhagavatam. Right in the beginning, the first chapter of Bhagavatam. You hear this verse. Prayena prane munio prayen alpayashak sabhya kalavasmin yuge janaha. Manda sumanda matayo manda bhagyayu padrita. Prabhupada is summarizing this verse in this purport. So this is a statement by Sutta Goswami. No, I think it's by the sages in Naimisharanya. They're saying, this is the situation of people in general here. So what kind of practice can they have that's practical, that they can become elevated and free from sinful reaction like that? So what this means that, for the most part, prayena means for the most part, people don't live very long, certainly compared to previous ages. It may be startling to learn that just in the Dwapara Yuga, people used to live 1,000 years. And before that, in the Treta Yuga, 10,000, before that, 100,000 in Satya Yuga. That's why Valmiki, the famous author of the Ramayana, he was a thief. He wasn't, he's that right? But he met, I think, Narada Muni, was it? I forget, yeah. And so he instructed him to chant the name of Ram. And he didn't want to chant. He said, okay, you chant death, right? Mara is death, Rama is death. And that I can do. I'm into that. And he was chanting Mara, Rama, Mara, Mara, Rama, Rama. Finally, he was chanting Rama. For 60,000 years, he was meditating because he lives in such a yuga. So the point is, in this age, we're just not suited. It's certainly not. Prabhupada says a few can practice. It's possible for a few rare souls. And whenever I think of that, I remember reading, and also in Prabhupada's books, you read about the Magh Mela and the Kumbh Mela, where so many people gather in the Triveni, the two visible rivers, Ganges and Yamuna, one invisible river, the Saraswati. They would meet, and at a certain time of year, as told by astrologers, it's always in January. It's freezing. It's very cold. And remarkably, Prabhupada took his devotees there on his first trip to India. And it's incredible. There's a biography of Yamuna Devi describing, and she described in detail how austere it was. There's no heat or anything. And then you get up at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning to go with thousands of others to go bathe in the Ganges at the time with, it's a freezing cold. But she was on it. But so so at that time, some of the yogis who were in the Himalayas, they come down, different groups of them, and Babajis, and many of them are naked, and they look like they're 35, but they're really 150 or 200 years old because they're practicing pranayama and they're practicing yoga and they keep themselves young, So I remember reading about this once. This was an account of all places, National Geographic magazine. You probably know about that magazine. So they went there and they attended and they took pictures, And there was an account, I think, of different groups of these yogis that had come down, and they all, they get first dibs on the bathing at just the right auspicious time. But there were different groups of them, and there were like pitched battles amongst the yogis about who's good. I don't know if they were, sending, this special weapons that they had developed, subtle mantric weapons. But anyway, the police, or rather the army, which is very present there to keep, this is 30 million people come. And they were keeping battle. And I was thinking, this does not show very much sattvic development amongst the yogis. And they're developing the powers and the siddhis, but the Vaishnava qualities of humility and gentleness and all of this. So the point is, this verse says, in this age we don't live very long. Manda sumanda. Manda means lazy in the matter of spiritual effort. I mean, there's a few people online, bless you, and there's a few people here. And even altogether, if you count the Hare Krishnas in the world, maybe there's 200,000 initiated, which is pretty remarkable. But that's a drop in the bucket. There's 8 billion, I think there's 8 billion people now. So the point is that Manda, in the modern age, people are generally pretty lazy in the matter of spiritual development. And if they're serious, so Manda Matayo, they become misguided, because there's so many cheaters and charlatans that are ready to try to take advantage of your, sentiment and cheat you and give you something that's not genuine. And then, so therefore, Manda Bhagya, people are unfortunate in so many ways. And then, Manda Bhagya, he upadrutaha, very disturbed. There's so many disturbing elements, this age of Kali. Mental disturbances, physical disturbances, emotional disturbances. So how are you going to practice this yoga where everything has to be under control and quiet and calm? Practically impossible. Therefore, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam. If you want to achieve, I put this into a little couplet, if you want to achieve the supreme goal of life in this age, when dissension and chaos abound, there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way that can ever be found but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name, but to chant Krishna's name with a stout-hearted vow, and to pray, O Lord Krishna, O friend of the poor, that my head ever unto your lotus feet bow. So that's the process. So Krishna will continue to describe here, and when he gets to text 20 to 23, I think he's going to describe samadhi. And Prabhupada makes the point that these same benefits, which is experiencing intense transcendental happiness through purified senses, and that's there in devotional service. The feeling that yung lab valap chapadam labam munyate narikam tadaha, the feeling that having gained this realization of God, of Krishna, complete detachment from material attraction, you think there is no greater gain. There is no greater gain that can be. Because there's a constant source of bliss and happiness and peace in your life. Even amidst the greatest disturbances, that's also there. Even in the greatest difficulty, one remains equipoised because it's fixed within and steady on the spiritual. So that's all those benefits are there in Krishna consciousness. So there's nothing we're not losing. And yet, there are also some very important instructions here for us. We just went through a section describing how the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. Udadedatmanatmanam, natmanam bhavasariyet, atmaiva yatmano bandhur, atmaiva riparatmanaha. One should elevate oneself by his own mind, not degrade oneself. The mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. The mind that's absorbed in material activities and fears and desires is your worst enemy. You don't know that, you're living. But the mind that is naturally attracted through practice to Krishna consciousness, to Krishna, is so enlivened when you hear about Krishna, you see devotees, that's your best friend. The mind becomes your best friend. So, but it's a matter of training. It's a matter of training, because in this age, it's so easy just by bad association to become confused and to become depressed and anxious and all these things. So Krishna consciousness is a great boon for anyone in any age, and it's available to us. Okay, any questions on this verse? Go ahead, Prabhu.
Krishna. So, Prabhu, like with Kriya Yoga or with meditation, like there are benefits like you can raise your Kundalini energy, you detoxify your 7 prime energy centers,
chakras,
or 114 overall. So, do we get the same benefits when we chant the Mahamantra?
I don't know if it's the same exact benefits, but Prabhupada said that in the higher stages of devotional service, you get some of the powers, some of the siddhis, and but you're not concerned with them so much, because the problem with the siddhis is that you're easily enamored of the siddhis. There's so many stories of great yogis in the Bhagavatam, Vishwamitra Muni, Durvasa Muni. These are powerful yogis, but they were very proud. They became very proud. Durvasa had a whole conflict with Ambarish. You know the story? And he had so many powers that when he was threatened by the chakra, and so it's very illustrative because Ambarish, it's described, Savaimana Krishna Padadabande. He placed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. He used his voice to glorify the Krishna, his ears. This goes through everything. Everything was engaged. But he was a simple devotee, humble. And he greeted Durvasa, and he was practicing Ekadashi. You know the story. Durvasa was envious because Ambarish was getting so many accolades, such a wonderful devotee. He was the king, But he was a king. He's a Kshatriya. Durvasa is a big yogi. He has all these powers, And so many thousands, tens of thousands of followers. And yet he wasn't, people were afraid of him. They weren't like giving him honor, So he was jealous. So Ambarish was a strict follower of Ekadashi. Ekadashi, the strict following is, you don't eat, you don't drink, you don't sleep. All you do is chant Hare Krishna, the Ekadashi day, and through the night. And then the next morning, at just the right time, there's an interval, you break the fast. Usually you break it with, you fasted from water too, so you break it with some milk, sugar, mixed with some honey or something. So Ambarish, so Durvasa came just before the period, maybe a half hour before the period, to break it. And Ambarish was very strict, it has to be within, get the band. So, of course, Ambarish greeted, the great Durvasa is here, would you like to help, join me in breaking the Ekadashi? And so he, Hare Krishna. I'm sorry, let's go to work. So, said, sure, just let me bathe. I want to take a bath. So he went to the lake or the pond, whatever it was. And he purposely stayed through where it was going through the period. And Ambarish was now in trouble because, if I break the fast when my guest hasn't eaten yet, that's a great offense. But if I don't break, I'm offending the Lord. So what to do? So he consulted with the Brahmins, and they couldn't give him an idea. So he gave the idea. Okay, I'll just drink some water. That's breaking and not breaking, right? So my exalted guest, of course, won't mind. So he sipped some water. That was breaking the fast, and he was waiting for Durvasa to come out, and he would join him in a repast. But Durvasa, understanding because he had mystic powers that he broke, he said, you've broken, you've offended your guest. So he created a Kritya, which is a female demoness. I looked this up. And from I think he pulled out some hair, this fiery demoness. And she went to burn Ambarish. So he was just standing there. And he didn't flinch, just like Prahlad didn't flinch, So, but Krishna had already given Ambarish access to the chakra. So the chakra immediately came, the Lord Krishna's, and destroyed that Kritya, and then went after Durvasa. Now, to be killed by the Kshatriya is actually very auspicious. But Durvasa, he wasn't that advanced. He started running, and running means that he was using his mystic powers, going all over. He went to Shiva, he went to Brahma, said, what could we do? The chakras after this. It's Narayan's chakra. So he goes, I think he went to the Vaikuntha planet in this universe. So he goes in there, and Lord Vishnu, so he meets Lord Vishnu, and he says, please, remove your chakra. So Krishna, as Vishnu, he says something very amazing. He says, I can't help you. I'm not independent. I'm under the control of my devotees. And that's very famous verses, which I forget right now. So he says, if you want to get saved, you got to go back down to Ambarish and beg his pardon. So he ran back down, was offering the obeisances. And of course, Ambarish, he prayed to the chakra, let him go. So the point is that devotees, have access to, the great devotees have access to the powers that they need for, rendering their service. I mean, Srila Prabhupada did not display any of these mystic powers, but he had incredible powers. There was once he wasn't a very accomplished yogi, but a yogi came to visit him, I think in Vrindavan. And he was famous for being able to produce something here, do some magic stuff. So he said, that's very impressive, but see all these devotees, there are devotees always around Prabhupada, I've given them the knowledge by which they can stop birth and death. Can you do that? Can you stop birth and death? So no, I can't stop it. So that's the more important power. And as far as the health benefits of yoga, I mean, Prabhupada wasn't averse to that. There's a story where they were walking in India somewhere, I think in Bombay, in a park, early in the morning, as Prabhupada did, and there was some gentleman who was standing on his head, off in a little bit off the path on the lawn somewhere. And so one of the doors says, "Oh, Prabhupada, we don't do that." So you should try it. It's actually very good for you. So I stand on my head every day. Well, I try to stand every day. I don't actually stand on the head. They have this little device where all the weight is on your shoulders. It's very useful. I do that every day. Reversing, there's benefits to it. To keep the body in good shape so that for service. It probably was not averse. In fact, when Prabhupada came to America, when he struggled for almost a year in really getting something going. And then in the summer of '66, he came downtown from uptown, and he was living in a loft in the Bowery, but he had some students, some serious people. He was chanting, and he started gathering some people, the evening chants. He was able to start the whole thing up, and then he got 26 Second Avenue. So then, Mukunda and Janaki, his wife, and Yamuna, and I think Guru Das was there, and Shyamasundar and Malati, and they opened up the San Francisco Center. And that was right in the middle of the Summer of Love, just gathering, early '67, and they had a tremendous success. And Sarmachandra carved the first deities, and so probably was like, and they had this mantra rock dance. Did you ever read about that? Oh, you should read the Lilamrita. It's all available online. And it was incredible. All the main bands were there, so Prabhupada was very, very successful. And he had initiated so many devotees. Then he came back to New York, and things were going. Now it was May already of '67. And at the end of May, there's the holiday in America. It's called Memorial Day. So just at that time, Prabhupada had a stroke. And he went in the hospital. Devotees thought he might die and everything, And so, So at first, I think it was, I forget if it was before or after, he got out of the hospital and he was recuperating at 22nd Avenue. And so the doctor came. This was before he went in. The doctor came, and it was Memorial Day. There were you couldn't reach anybody, so they found this one doctor. And he took one look, he was, who are these guys? He was kind of put off because it was the Hare Krishnas. So he looked at Prabhupada, and one thing he said, I think he praised too much, and then he recommended as he was leaving, because I didn't think he knew much, he should get more exercise. He should walk. And Prabhupada took that instruction, and that's the beginning of the morning walks. And Prabhupada took those morning walks without fail, wherever he was. If it's raining, he would walk inside, And the massages. And he said that those who kept his health at what it was, So we can do that, but don't get deviated into, the whole thing with the Kundalini and everything. But in the fourth, this one, I'll stop here with this. The fourth canto, there's a story of Maharaj Prithu, who, like all the great kings, he retired at the end, went to the forest to renounce. And it describes he was practicing pranayama and this and that. And in one of the purports, Prabhupada says, we don't have to worry about pranayama. The breathing is already regulated when you're in big kirtan. It's very regulated, and you're getting all the benefits that you need from the pranayama. So there's that.
Breathing regulates, that also helps in everything.
Yes, and actually it's a fact that in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which was written by Sanatana Goswami in conjunction with Gopalbhatta Goswami, it's instructions for household devotees. And one of I have never read it, but I've been in there. It's in there, pranayama, to quiet the mind before chanting japa. It's perfectly okay. All right, let's go on here. So he goes on with the instructions. Samam kaya shiro grivam. This is text 13. Dharyan achalang stiraha. Yeah. Sampreksha nasikagram swam
Sampreksha nasikagram swam
Dishaschan avalokayan
Disaschana Balokayan
Prashantatma vigatabhir
Prashantatma Vigatabhi
Brahmachari vritesitaha
Brahmachari Vritestata
Manaksanyamya matchitto
Manasamyam Chasitto
Yukta asita matparaha.
Yukta Asita Matparaha.
One should hold one's body, neck and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. I tried that, but after 5 seconds I feel like I'm very cross-eyed. I don't know how they do that. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life. Purport. The goal of life is to know Krishna, who is situated within the heart of every living being as Paramatma, the four-handed Vishnu form. The yoga process is practiced in order to discover and see this localized form of Vishnu, and not for any other purpose. The localized Vishnu Murti is the plenary representation of Krishna dwelling within one's heart. One who has no program to realize this Vishnu Murti is uselessly engaged in mock yoga practice and is certainly wasting his time. Krishna is the ultimate goal of life, and the Vishnu Murti situated in one's heart is the object of yoga practice. To realize this Vishnu Murti within the heart, one has to observe complete abstinence from sex life. Therefore, one has to leave home and live alone in a secluded place, remaining seated as mentioned above. One cannot enjoy sex life daily at home or elsewhere and attend a so-called yoga class and thus become a yogi. One has to practice controlling the mind and avoiding all kinds of sense gratification, of which sex life is the chief. In the rules of celibacy written by the great sage Yajnavalkya, it is said, Karmana manasavdacha sarvavastasu sarvada sarvatamaitana tyago brahmacharyam pratakshate. Excuse me. Quote, the vow of brahmacharya is meant to help one completely abstain from sex indulgence in work, words, and mind, at all times, under all circumstances, and in all places. No one can perform correct yoga practice through sex indulgence. Brahmacharya is taught, therefore, from childhood when one has no knowledge of sex life. Children at the age of 5 are sent to the Gurukula, or the place of the spiritual master, and the master trains the young boys in the strict discipline of becoming brahmacharis. Without such practice, no one can make advancement in any yoga, whether it be dhyana, jnana, or bhakti. One who, however, follows the rules and regulations of married life, having a sexual relationship only with his wife, and that also under regulation, is also called a brahmachari. Such a restrained householder, brahmachari, may be accepted in the bhakti school. But the jnana and dhyana schools do not even admit householder brahmacharis. They require complete abstinence without compromise. In the bhakti school, a householder brahmachari is allowed controlled sex life because the cult of bhakti yoga is so powerful that one automatically loses sexual attraction, being engaged in the superior service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 2:59, it is said, Vishayava nivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasabhajang rasopyasya padam dvishtva nivartate. Whereas others are forced to restrain themselves from sense gratification, a devotee of the Lord automatically refrains because of superior taste. Other than the devotee, no one has any information of that superior taste. Vigata. This means becoming fearless. One cannot be fearless unless one is fully in Krishna consciousness. A conditioned soul is fearful due to his perverted memory, his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. The Bhagavatam 11.237 says, Bhayam dvitiya banabeshatakshyad ishadapetasya viparhiyo asmriti. Krishna consciousness is the only basis for fearlessness. Therefore, perfect practice is possible for a person who is Krishna conscious. And since the ultimate goal of yoga practice is to see the Lord within, a Krishna conscious person is already the best of all yogis. The principles of the yoga system mentioned herein are different from those of the popular so-called yoga societies. So here we get the real understanding of how difficult it is to practice this yoga strictly. But Prabhupada, throughout this purport and throughout this chapter, indicates to us that we don't have to worry. We don't have to think that, well, if I can't practice, just like Arjuna was worried after he got this. He says, I don't think I can do it. The famous verse, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balabhadradham You know the verse? Balabhadvidam. Bhaya eva sadhuskudam. I forget. Anyway. The meaning is that the mind is so restless and uncontrolled and obstinate that it's like trying to control the wind. It's so powerful. Tanmanye, something like that. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, we got it. Thank you. So it's a fact. The mind is so powerful that without the practice of chanting the holy name in this age, it's practically impossible. It's just because you start from such a difficult place. If you live practically anywhere in the modern world, you're going to be bombarded with so many distractions. It used to be, okay, we'll go up to the forest, but then you just pull out that phone, Anywhere you go, the distraction is there. So how to develop such a powerful meditation that you lose interest in all of these distractions? That's Krishna consciousness. This practice, Vishayavanivartante, very important, verse 259, that one can restrain himself from the objects of the senses. Nirahasya means you're not consuming them, right? Vishayavana nirahasya dehinak. But rasabarjam, the taste remains, is still in there, But param drishtvanabhajade, by directly experiencing, here you seeing, seeing, hearing, tasting, the transcendence, the param, Krishna, you get the higher taste, and even the rasa goes. The taste goes. And then you're situated, you're peaceful. The mind is no longer your enemy. The whole problem is that even with the yoga system, you're not meditating on the all-attractive form of the Lord. A lot of it is negative. You're withdrawing from this, control this, and it's a tremendous challenge to do that. And that's why even the yogis, Lord Chaitanya has this wonderful verse. He's Krishna. And he's saying, who is really peaceful? Because without peace, how can there be happiness? That's right in the second chapter. So he says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataeva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. Very illuminating verse. So the Krishna Bhakta, the real pure devotee, very advanced devotee, is truly peaceful because he's free from all material desires. Nishkama. But others, there's only like 4 categories of human beings in the world, basically. Bhukti, Mukti, Siddhi, Kami. The Bhukti Kamis, a Kami is one who's very desirous, full of desire for material enjoyment. Bhukti. They're not peaceful, You want something, you strive for it, that's not, and are you going to get it? You get it. And then if you get it, it disappoints you, or you lose it, or there's a threat that you'll lose it, and that's and because of the force of time, inevitably it just becomes a disturbance, and you die with those unfulfilled desires come back, so that bhukti kami, they can't obviously be peaceful. And then there's the mukti kamis, those who desire liberation. But if you just want liberation without any tinge of bhakti, then that's a personal desire. Basically, why do you want mukti? So that all my sufferings will end. No more birth, no more death, no more disease, no more old age, no more climate change, no more tornadoes, no more threefold miseries. Oh, that's great. Let me get that. But it's all me. I want this. It's material desire. So even if a very few, by great austerities, because they don't have chanting, they don't have Krishna, they don't have Sangha, they don't have Prasadam, all you've got is your own mind, intelligence, and your will. I'm going to, defeat this. So a very few, aruha kuchena param padam, they can rise up to this Brahman platform, and they're in Brahman. Now I'm free. I am that I am. There's no content to my thought. The thoughts, that's all Maya. It's just, I exist, pure spirit. Can you be happy like that? You'd be bored after like 5 minutes. So they eventually get bored, and they come down again. Aruha kuchena param padam patantyadho anadvita yushmarangaya. My dear Lord, this is the demigods praying, because they're averse to worshipping your lotus feet, Their intelligence is not purified. And despite all that effort, they come down again and they engage in some material welfare work, or they just think, oh, let me go to America, maybe I can get some money. So that's not going to work. So Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kamis, and then there's the Siddhi Kamis I mentioned, the yogis like Durvasa, Vishwamitra, they get all these powers. They can walk on water, fly in the air, create a universe, a planet. These cities, you read about them, amazing. There's a chapter of the Uddhava Gita. Krishna talks about that, and after delineating the basic principle how you can get the cities, he says, but intelligent people don't go after the cities; they just worship me. That's Krishna's. That's also Krishna speaking. So anyway, that's an answer to this chapter. And Krishna at the end, he will give Arjuna encouragement. He says, "Oh, don't worry, Arjuna." He was worried. Well, what if I try and I fail? Okay, you'll come back. And try again next birth. You'll be born in a good family. So Arjuna wasn't very enlivened about it. The main thing was this: I'm a kshatriya. I can't sit like that. I'm a householder, yeah. So Krishna says, don't worry. At the end, like Radharani says, don't worry, the mudra. Abhayadan, Abhayadan. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. Shraddhavam bhajateyo mam same yukta dhamomataha. Those yogis who are always thinking me within, worship me with great and transcendental faith, Yoginam is madgatena shraddhavam bhajateyo same yukta dhamomataha. They are the best yogis in my opinion. In other words, Arjuna is already at that level because he's his intimate associate. And then we begin the 7th chapter, which is very interesting because that's the next verse, the first verse in the 7th chapter. Maya sakta manapata yogam yunjanmanasha. Now I'm going to teach you how your mind, because if you remember, it's all the mind, how the mind can be naturally attracted to me. How you can develop so the mind will be attracted to me. And that's all about bhakti. It's all about surrender to Krishna and worshiping him, So, but there are important instructions here in this, like he's going to talk about not eating too much, not eating too little, moderation. That also pertains to us. So there's very many things. And I highly recommend those yoga recordings, yoga system recordings. So you just send me an email and I'll give you a link. You can download them and have a ball. Okay, any questions on this particular verse? Kaya Shiro Grivam. Yes, Prabhu. But use the mic because we have an audience. Hold the button. Show him out, Francisco. Okay.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhuji, about so we read in this that the yoga system is very difficult. The Ashtanga yoga system is very difficult, and Bhakti yoga is much easier. Mm-hmm. But Bhakti yoga also feels very difficult.
Challenge in the Bhakti.
So how do we?
Well, the thing is, we have to recognize that we've been conditioned for so many millions of births. We don't know. There's so much conditioning, so with bad habits that whereas it's easier and it's practical in this age, it still takes determination. It takes good association, and it's a process of transforming, of cleansing, the heart. And so we've been given the process in great detail, nectar of devotion and so forth. So that's what it's going to take. We have to chant 16 rounds. 16 rounds. You know the story when Prabhupada started the movement? He's sitting there in this little storefront at 26th Avenue in Manhattan, 1966. And he's going to have the first initiations. And so they have to take vows. And the vows, are to chant a certain number of rounds every day and follow the 4 regular principles. Those are the vows that you take. So how many rounds? 64. 64 rounds. That was the standard in the Gaudiya Math, So they had just finished stringing their beads, these big red beads. I remember we used to have what you call 5 and dimes back in then. Now it's dollar store, and even there you can't find anything for $1 anymore. And so a dime used to be worth something. You pick it up off the ground. And so they had certain stores in Manhattan. Everything was there. So they had these beads, the big beads that they, you know. And so it's at 64 rounds. So okay. So they started chanting, and they weren't chanting like us, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, you know, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. So they came back to Prabhupada at the end of the day. They said, "Srila Prabhupada, if you or actually Swamiji at the time, if you want us to do anything else, we can't chant 64 rounds. No Back to Guided magazine, no cooking, you know." Okay. 32. All right. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Can't do 32. 16, absolute minimum. At least 60. So that's been the standard. Although, you know, on Ekadashi days, many devotees chant more. Probably would recommend more. And if you go on a retreat or you go to Vrindavan for a while, you can actually chant, you know, you can take hours to chant, you know. It's been 64 rounds. I've chanted 64 rounds. We used to have these japa retreats in America. We had one up in Joshua Tree, actually several. This was in the early aughts of the, you know. Wonderful, because all day, you know, you're hearing about glories of the holy name. Sachinandan Swami came, Giriraj Swami came, you know, just for a whole week, you're just thinking about the holy name, chanting, kirtan, everything. So one of the days was 64 round day, you know, if you can do it, you know. So I got to try to do it, you know. It's chanting. It was very, very wonderful experience, you know. To just spend that long with the holy name. Eventually, you know, the mind quiets down a little more, you know, a very good atmosphere, you know. But it's practical for us, but it's still difficult to perfect it. And that's why right at the beginning in the second chapter, Krishna says, don't worry, not just in Dr. Yosoti. I'm sorry, that's this verse. That there's no loss, no diminution, and even a little advancement on this path protects one from the greatest type of danger. Now, Prabhupada talks about bhayam, fear. The word that uses bhayam. But bhayam can mean danger or fear. This is one of the words in Sanskrit. It's very interesting. The thing that results from the thing that you're talking about is also becomes a meaning for that thing. Just like the word gati. We sing every morning two songs. Those are Mangalartik and the Guru Puja. Last verse of the Samsara prayers, the last third line, what is it? Yasya prasada nagati, second line, Yasya prasada nagati katobi. That without the mercy of the spiritual master, there's no means of advancement. That's the word gati. Now gati also means the goal itself, right? So the goal and the means to the goal have the same word. So similarly, the what was the word I was thinking? What is it? Bhayam. Thank you. So the last word there in that verse is mahato bayat. The great fear, or the greatest danger. What is the greatest danger? Prabhupada explains in the purport. It is the loss of human form of life. So even a little advancement in devotional service, what to speak of a lot of advancement, you're sure to get a human body, and because you got to, the beginning of the verse is that there's no loss of diminution. That means that, okay, you start from the 2% in the next life or 3%, however far you got. So you need a human body. So that's very encouraging. So we try as best we can in this lifetime to go as far as we can. You know, we should try as hard to become pure devotees, but it's, you know, the Kali-yugites, and it's difficult. And so we're making progress. In all the millions of births we had no clue about what the goal of life was. And now we're on the path, and if we're serious, we should be serious, avoid offenses, especially against devotees. We'll make some substantial progress, and a few, you know, births, we're back home. I personally am hoping, I really have to try to not come back in this world, because it's all burning up, drying up. Is it going to be feasible? You know? I mean, they're not going to do anything about it. It's just going to keep pouring out, you know. So this is the only practical solution, you know, on a personal level, is to try to go back home, back to Godhead. That's my opinion anyway. All right. Any other question? Quick?
Prabhu, I chanted one time 64 rounds. I was under a lot of stress, and it really did make me feel probably the best I've ever felt, even under difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
And then, but it was hard. I mean, I lost my voice.
Oh, yeah.
But it was wonderful. It was. And my question was, did Srila Prabhupada, do they know that he chanted 64 or more or less? Because I mean, he was so busy. I don't know how he had time.
Well, I mean, yeah, when he came to America, but by that time, you're chanting all the time. It's like Kirtaniya Sada Hari, and the chanting is going on inside. They could always be chanting. The devotees who would travel with him, he'd be on the plane, and he'd be just, sometimes you wouldn't hear, but the lips would be going. He was chanting. Yes, within. Yeah. Within the chanting is going on 24 hours. There's no question.
That's another question I had, but I never asked. So does that count doing? I mean, japa is one thing, but then if we internally chant, like when we can't chant out loud, that's acceptable too, or like in addition to the 16?
Well, yeah, the 16 are meant to be done audibly,
right?
Or at least so that you can hear it. It can be very softly, but there's no reason why you can't chant the rest of the day. Once you get those 16, yeah, it takes determination, and the problem is the distractions. This is as I said in that verse. There's so many distractions, always disturbed. But if we mold our life in such a way, you can minimize those distractions. That's a great advantage of the ashram and so forth. All right, we better adjourn because we're going to get the arti is coming soon. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. And all glories to Sita Thakurani, whose birthday it is today. She is the consort of Advaita Acharya. Yes, and she gave Nimai his name, the name Nimai, because he's been on a tree. She came and visited him and offered wonderful gifts and said, "Oh, he must have his Nimai." That was his name in childhood. And she was a great cook. There was also a wonderful feast at Advaita Acharya's place after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. Hare Krishna.